Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge.
And I'm Ashlyn Sledge.
And let's talk horror. Now, today we're going to be doing a review for the film Prey, and we are so lucky to have a special guest along with us, comedian, TV writer, Joey Clift. Joey, how you doing today, man?
Yeah, how's it going, everybody? I'm doing great. I'm so excited to talk about this film with y'all. I've seen it twice already, and it's only like maybe 2 days old. So that speaks to how cool it is and how good of a movie it is.
It really is, and there's so much fun that we could talk about with this film. But before we get into that, for the viewers that don't know you, I would like to educate them a little bit. You are an enrolled Cowlitz Indian tribal member, but some of your writing credits include Spirit Rangers on Netflix, the new Looney Tunes on Cartoon Network, and Molly of Denali on PBS. Real quick, how's it feel to write for new Looney Tunes, man? Because that's something we grew up with. What's that like for you to create?
Oh, that was that was a few years ago, and I would say that probably one of the most fulfilling moments of my maybe life was writing character name Bugs Bunny, line of dialogue, "What's up, Doc?" And knowing that one, I was getting paid to do it, and two, somebody was going to animate Bugs Bunny saying "What's up, Doc," which I wrote.
Right?
So yeah, totally. It's like a weird bucket list item I didn't even know was true, but when the opportunity came up, it was amazing.
I can't imagine. I honestly, I cannot imagine what that must have felt like. But not only do you have those writing credits, but you have short films that have screened everywhere from Comedy Central to Just for Laughs to the Smithsonian Museum. So, I mean, you are a very busy guy that does a whole lot in the comedy world. What was it that really kicked you into wanting to jumpstart comedy for your life?
So I'm one of those people that I grew up really loving comedy. I'm an enrolled Cowlitz. I grew up on the Tulalip Reservation, and basically I'm just somebody that would watch an episode of The Simpsons, record it, and then rewatch it 50 times until the next episode came on. So those kinds of shows in comedy are just in my bones and comedy DNA. But because there aren't really, or at the time there weren't really any native comedians on TV, I didn't think I was allowed to work in comedy. So I basically just, did weird little comedy bits. I would always put jokes in my book reports in high school and stuff like that. I hosted a lot of talent shows and didn't know that what I was aiming for was comedy. So instead I went to school to be a small market TV weather guy, because I figured they get to crack jokes and have weird personalities. So I was that's what all this is building toward. And then fortunately, when I was going to college, a bunch of my professors kind of pulled me aside and said hey, you could just work in comedy, right? And I was like, what? So, this is around 2010. I moved to Los Angeles, just dove into the comedy scene with both feet. But yeah, like I said, it's just, I think it was just something that even if I couldn't verbalize that's what I wanted to do, just comedy and making people laugh has been in my bones since I was a kid, basically.
A man of my own heart. I completely understand where you're coming from.
Awesome. So most importantly, though, I like that you created the LA Underground Museum, which is awesome, a 15,000 member strong Facebook group. That is so cool for the cats.
The LA Underground Cat Network.
Yes,
it's so awesome,
I love that.
Oh yeah. So I created a Facebook group for LA comedians to share pictures of their cats. I'm just a big time cat guy. One of the funniest things about that group for me is that if I go to a party in Los Angeles, people aren't excited to talk to me about my career, my writing, my short films, my comedy. People are always wait, you're the LA Underground Cat Network guy. Here, look at a picture of my cat. That's the thing that people stop me at parties about, which I love.
I do. Right. I love that too.
It was one of the first things that Ashley was oh, hey, I love this.
I know.
So if you guys want to get to know Joey a little bit better, now is not the time to really learn about him. But what you can do is you can click on all these links down here in the description. You can follow him on social media, and you can stay up to date on everything that he is doing. And we're so proud to have you here, man, talking about a movie that, like you said at the top, you really, really enjoyed. Ashley and I really enjoyed. Let's dive into this. Let's talk about Prey a little bit. One thing I want to talk about first and foremost, there is going to be some spoilers here, guys. So if you have not seen the movie, it is on Hulu. I cannot recommend it enough. Shut this off, go watch the film, come back unspoiled, and we can talk about it. So some of the shots I want to talk about, the cinematography of this film. I liked a lot of the beautiful shots of the scenery, a lot of the bird's eye view shots is something you pointed out.
Yeah, I love the bird eye shots for sure.
And the use of focus in this film, and the use of focus is something that I feel gets overlooked a lot in film. But this film really, really plays with your ability to look at what's going on in the foreground and the background. So when you go into a movie like this with cinematography as good as it is, how did that affect you on your final idea of the film, on your final, what your final thoughts of the film are?
Yeah, I mean, you took the words right out of my mouth. The film is shot so beautifully. There are so many like shots in this film that like could be a painting. Like there's the moment when the main character played just immaculately by Amber Midthunder,
Hmm.
who's an amazing
Yeah.
actress. When she's in the tree and the mountain lions on the other branch of the tree, and it's like the frame is she's on one side of the tree and the mountain lions on the other. That's just like an amazing shot. Like the
Yes.
you mentioned the bird's eye view shot of the Amber Midthunder and the other character running through the field and the predators like running behind them and
Yes.
just like
I
really
love
coming up
that.
on them. That shot's amazing. I mean, there's that incredible shot when Amber Midthunder's character is facing off against the predator, at the end of the film, and she's jumping off the tree with the hatchet. And like that just
Hmm.
that's just like a painting, that's just
Yeah.
Hmm.
an amazing shot. And like that's something that just, right up the top, I want to say is like this is available on Hulu. This should have been in theaters. It looks incredible.
Yes.
Actually, one of my notes I have here is one of my qualms with the film. I guess it's not even a qualm with the film itself. Is I wish I could have seen this in cinema.
It would have been a good
I think this
theater.
would have been a great theatrical
Yeah, for sure.
experience.
Yeah, I actually I was invited to the premiere last week. It was my first big Hollywood premiere. It was really cool.
Nice.
And so I saw it in a theater in Los Angeles, just full of other native people who like work in Hollywood. And like, I gotta say, this movie was, I mean, it was incredible to see live. It was also just like, I don't know, there were so many moments. Like basically anytime that like a native person did something cool in the movie, it was followed by an immediate audience response.
That's amazing.
And this movie's just native people doing cool shit for
Right.
90 minutes straight. So it was just nonstop applause and cheering. So, that's something that I really, I this should have been in theaters. And it was also like, it's doing really well, on Twitter, it's getting like rave reviews. It's, I think it was like the #2 trend on Twitter in the United States for like a good chunk of the past few days. So like, I feel like this would have been #1 on the box office if it came out.
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
Absolutely.
so yeah, like I'm really hoping that Fox and Disney kind of learn their lesson from this and give it at least like a limited theatrical run, because like
Sure.
Yeah.
I would grab a ton of friends and I would have like party
Mm-hmm.
screenings for it.
I would have too.
So you talked about going and seeing that. So being a Native American, does this influence how you watch the film? Like, do you feel like it's organic and like?
Did it feel authentic to you? Like
Yeah.
a lot of times when you have something like this, it almost feels pandering. Being Native American yourself, was this something that you watched and you're like, wow, this is really authentic and this really reminds me of what it could have been like in 1719? Or did it feel more of like a pandering to a certain type of audience type of feel?
Yeah, well, I gotta say a couple things on that. This movie is like just historic in its representation. This is the first time in the history of movies that a major motion picture has been led and starred by a Native woman. This is one of the first times, probably the first time in cinema history when a major motion pictures had like a largely Native cast. And like I'm Cowlitz, so I can't necessarily, which is Washington State, I can't necessarily speak to Comanche representation from like a personal standpoint, just because I'm not Comanche. Comanche is more
Sure.
of like a Plains tribe. But like I know that Dan Trachtenberg, the director, really went above and beyond on making sure that Native representation was just like spot on. He hired Jane Myers, who's a really great producer and a member of the Comanche Nation, to make sure that all of the Comanche representation was great. I think that they had a Native person in every single department working on the film. And they also went as far as, like I think hiring a lot of like Native youths that wanted to work into movies in movies, and, gave them opportunities to like intern in different positions so they could like learn and kind of get their, get their like first opportunities in the industry. So, like, I don't think that this movie was pandering its Native representation at all. I think it was the first movie in the history of cinema to like set the bar for what I expect for good representation.
Yeah.
Which is just, it was like accurate and cool. And like, I mean, I don't know, it's like to the point of like, I took some notes on this, like, to the point that Jane Myers, like the producer of the film, like she cared enough about making sure that this movie was legit that like there's a scene where there's a woman with a baby on her back on a cradle board carrying it through the tribal village. Like Jane Myers made that cradle board herself to make sure that it was authentic.
That's awesome.
She also like there's a version of this, you can watch it on Hulu in English, but there's also a Comanche dub that's entirely in the Comanche language,
Oh,
which is for sure the first time that a major motion picture has ever been released in Comanche. And like native languages are passed down verbally. There's not really, oftentimes there's not like, a dictionary that you can buy that's got this language translated. Like my tribe, we have dictionaries, but you like have to be a tribal member. You have to show your tribal ID to buy it. So, Jane Myers, to get those Comanche translations to like make the film, had to reach out to like her family members, her grandparents in a lot of cases to like get, the different, translations for what different words meant. And it also like, they also did such a good job of I think using Comanche traditions to like flesh out the world in a real way, like the pigments, the pigments and dyes that are used in the clothing and the characters are like accurate to what would have been available to members of the Comanche Nation at the time. And even there's an alt title of the film called I'm probably gonna butcher this, but it's Kudamia, I think, and that means rite of passage in the Comanche language. And that's like really what this film is about. Is it's about like our main character, played by Amber Midthunder's rite of passage to hunt something that's like trying to hunt her, and she just chooses the predator as her thing,
right?
And it's like it's really just, and I don't know. There's also just like other cool shit where it's like this is the first time in a major motion picture where I've seen a period piece with native characters in it where we're not the cannon fodder, where we're all like fleshed out and like playing things to the top of our intelligence. So yeah, like I said, it's like this is not pandering at all. It's just the first movie in like major motion pictures to like make an effort to get it right, and I think
that's what I wanted to get across, because for us as we're not native at all, so for us to come in here and go, well, this is not, I can't do that. I don't have the ability to do that. So
but just looking at it, like it looks authentic and it looks really awesome. And
that's what I wanted to make sure that we weren't overstepping our bounds by saying, oh, this is completely authentic, because we and like you said, with you being Cowlitz and not being Comanche, I get that that's not the same thing, but at least having your native background, you've grown up with, and you've learned a lot of these things. So for you to look at it and say it's very authentic and it's one of the first motion pictures to do all these things for you, that means a lot to me, to know that we were spot on with this, that we did feel that authenticity come through on the camera. And it's amazing to hear you talk about this in such high regard with the history that it has. And I just learned from you about all the natives that were working on set. That's amazing. To have them in front of the camera is awesome. To have them behind the scenes working just as hard is even better. It shows the love that they have for this.
Well, yeah, because like oftentimes what happens in Hollywood, I mean, really before this movie, is like if you have a movie that's like, about native characters or starring native actors or whatever, they would usually hire, like oftentimes Hollywood productions would hire like a native consultant for one day, which is basically, hey, we're shooting this in a week. Will you read this script and tell us if it's racist or not? And then like usually the answer is, oh yes, this is very racist. And then the producer would be like, oh, I'm just gonna delete that email, like so this is a movie where like it feels like, like once again, like I didn't work on the production, so I can't speak to the specifics, but reading a lot of interviews with Dan Trachtenberg and Jane Myers, it really feels like she was brought on very early on to like help shape the story and help shape, the world of the movie, and like to make sure that like the native representation, not just in front of, but also behind the camera was just spot on and dope, and I think that like, it's something that makes it like, usually if a movie comes out or a TV show comes out about native stuff, native Twitter is like very quick to like call it racist or just be like, oh, this sucks, nobody watched this thing. Whereas Prey, like it's been nothing but love. It's like it's native Twitter is like, oh, finally there's like a dope native action movie with like a native action star that we can like all rally behind. So it's been so cool to see not just like the movie getting great reviews, but also just like native people embracing this movie and being like, why isn't there like an Amber Midthunder Prey action figure we can all buy,
Right. I would definitely buy that.
I would too.
Yeah, and what you were saying
when you were talking about this being a theater experience, and what I love about that is, not only would you take all your native friends to see it, but this is not just an action or a sci-fi or even a drama at points or a horror movie, which it totally is a horror movie. Totally. It's everything rolled into one. So I don't understand why we wouldn't get a theatrical release for this film. Even when you want to talk about the sounds that they use in this film, not just the score.
Yeah, like when she's in the woods and you can hear like the birds and the loud sounds.
Everything is so organic when it comes to this film. And one question that I wanted to talk to you about, Naruto and Tabi's relationship. It seems like everybody in the film is underestimating Naru from the beginning, except for Tabe. He's the only one that really has her back throughout the whole thing. What was your interpretation of their relationship?
Yeah, I got a shout out also. Tabe, played by I believe Dakota Beavers, amazing actor. This is his first acting role, and he knocked it out of the park.
He nailed it.
He was so good.
Yeah, I really appreciated their relationship in that, you know, like I mentioned earlier, like I feel like these are two characters that played everything at the top of their intelligence. You know, oftentimes with period pieces with Native people, it's like they're just kind of played as like just not intelligent. And you know, it's sort of like, oh, the predator showed up, I guess we got to worship it as a god. And it's like, no, these are still human beings who are intelligent, you know. So, you know, I really appreciate that both of those characters you know, really observed the predator and really like took the lessons from like observing the predator doing his thing to like learn how to inevitably defeat him, you know. And you know, so I really appreciate like that aspect of it, is these were just played as two like intelligent, capable characters who were very well rounded, you know. Like it didn't lean on tropes. I think that that this relationship was very unique and specific, and there were also just so many like cool moments that I appreciated of you know, like when Tabe drops the iconic line, "If it bleeds, we can kill it." Like that line, I went back and watched the original Predator yesterday just to kind of recenter myself on it. And when Arnold Schwarzenegger says that line, it's just like 80s machismo, you know. It's just like he's just saying it as like, you know, an 80s badass. Whereas like there is just something beautiful in how the line is kind of recontextualized of like a brother trying to convince his sister that if they work together they can kill this thing, you know. Yeah, it's like it's less like I'm a badass and we'll do this, and it's more like we can do this together, you know. Like and you know, like I just I appreciated that their relationship was like, you know, like you mentioned earlier that like Amber Midthunder's character, everybody was kind of discounting her, and like Tabe I think was trying to be a protective older brother, but not in a way that was like stereotypical bad guy-ish. Like it's clear that like it was coming from a place of care, you know. Like he loved his sister, and that like I think really spoke to their relationship and made it, it's why I made it just so like, you know, horribly jarring when Tabe got, you know, killed by the predator after an amazing fight where he did such cool stuff as shooting the predator with an arrow and then running up and pulling the arrow out of the predator and then shooting him again with the same arrow.
The choreography in this movie was great.
Yeah.
You know, it's very rare that, you know, obviously being Sledgehammer horror, we talk mostly about horror movies, which this movie is a horror movie, but there's a lot of action and fight choreography that go along with this film too. And that's one scene that I wanted to talk about. And before we get into that, I audibly cheered when he said, "If it bleeds, we can kill it." Right there. I was like, oh yes, that's such a great throwback to that line, you know, like, and like you said, it was a totally different way he said it. It wasn't, "I'm a big badass and if it can bleed, I can kill it." It was, "We can do this together. You and I, we're a team. We've been a team our whole lives. Let's continue to be a team and do this now."
I like how he says when they're chained up or whatever, and he's like, "This is what you wanted to go after." Like,
this was your pick.
Yeah, like that was hilarious.
Well, yeah. Well, and then there's other stuff where, like, I believe the Amber Midthunder character refers to the predator as I forget the exact word that she uses, but it's like the Comanche word for monster. And like Tabe just immediately gives her big brother shit, and it's just like, oh, is it like the boogeyman or whatever?
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's like that kind of thing. Like, it's just it's a fresh relationship, you know.
Yeah.
It's like, and it reads as a brother sister relationship, but not like a tropey one. It reads as like a real one, you know.
It really does. Yeah.
And they don't try to push comedy in this movie, but the comedy they do have lands very well. Like another scene that we were going to talk about is when they are chained up at that part, and she's talking about how when the beaver knew it was in trouble, it chewed through his leg, and then she uses the chain and
he's
does
like, "What are you doing?"
"I'm smarter than a beaver." And his look of pure happiness and relief at that moment is just so amazing.
Well, and that's also like what I love about that is like that's kind of the turn for Tabe of like kind of discounting his sister, but then when she does that, he's like, "Oh, my sister's smart as F." Like,
yeah,
you know?
For sure.
We were talking about choreography and how well this looks. Even with what I do love about this movie is they did a lot more practical. It wasn't completely CGI'd all up, but I did love the predator and the bear fight.
Oh yeah.
That was dope.
Yes.
And the gore that comes along with this movie. I figured we could talk about these both at the same time. Was there a certain fight scene or a certain, I hate saying a certain kill that amused you the most, because that's really gross, but was there a certain fight scene or a certain kill that was your favorite of the film?
I mean, there were so many, like, look, as somebody who's also a huge horror fan, I'm always a big fan of just big gory kills.
Yeah,
So,
we love the
it's like,
gore. I love
yeah,
the
so like,
gore.
so the gore in this movie was outstanding. Yeah, like the bear fight, the predator cutting open the bear and then blooding dripping the bear's blood on the
Yes.
predator. And that's the first time that Amber Midthunder like sees the predator is when it's covered in bear blood. It's just cool. But I gotta say the biggest crowd pleaser was when both the predator and Amber Midthunder just murder a bunch of French trappers.
Yeah.
Like that sequence of the predator destroying all those French trappers, followed by Amber Midthunder's character destroying a bunch of French trappers, just in a room full of natives. That just was a real crowd pleaser. Like,
You had a room full of natives actively rooting for the predator at this moment.
oh yeah. We were just like, oh, yeah, F those colonizers. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. So well, and then there were also just a lot of really cool, like, like the predator using his razor net to like pin a French trapper to a
Yes.
stump, and then it just like essentially
It just
mincemeats.
disintegrates.
Yeah, it just disintegrates him.
Yeah.
And then like the entire. I mean, it's successful because it's the climactic moment in the film, but it's like Amber Midthunder's character's fight with the predator when she inevitably kills the predator is just like cool for like 50 different reasons,
Yeah.
Yeah. When it shows her true intelligence too, because
yeah,
you have the anxiety at the beginning of her being stuck in that quicksand.
Yeah.
You know,
she's trying to get out.
For her to come back and use that against this predator, I thought was amazing, because it showed that she doesn't have to be Arnold Schwarzenegger to take out the predator. She can be a 100-pound native woman and outsmart this monster and take his head to the tribe.
Well, I love how she says, like, he doesn't see me as a threat, and that is dangerous. Like, I love that.
Well, it's not just like in intelligence too. It's like resourcefulness and I think that they do such a good job of like really telegraphing out all of the ways that she's going to beat it. So early in the movie they show us the orange petaled flowers that she uses to help out one of her fellow tribes members who's bleeding out from a cougar attack or something, and then we learn, oh, that cools the blood, and then later in the movie she like uses that to make herself invisible to the predator. Like she's throwing the tomahawk at trees. One of the first shots in the movie is her throwing this tomahawk, and she like walks and gets it, and then later in the movie she's like, oh, if I like braid my own rope and tie it to the tomahawks, I can just I can use it as nunchucks basically,
right.
And like the like her falling into the mud earlier, the quicksand, and then using that to beat the predator, her noticing like the three dots that directly corresponds to where the wrist spears are going to fire, and then using that to like steal his mask to have him just like shoot himself with a bunch of like wrist spears. It's such a great movie of a character like you really track her like learning and using every bit of information that she's going to use to like pay off to kill this beast.
And another thing, I totally called her Naru Scorpion once she got the hatchet on a rope, because
dope.
That was her total get over here moment for me. But another thing that I wanted to talk about real quick before we get into what you wanted to talk about with the actual predator look, the resourcefulness that she has, and like you said, how they're building this from the beginning. While she's doing that, you still have everybody except for Tabi underestimating her, and Tabi even gets frustrated to the point to where he's like, it wasn't us that did this, it was me. He lies to her, and he's like, at this point, I was really angry when I was watching it, but then I started thinking about it, and you're right, he is a big brother at the end of the day, and at this point he's trying to protect his little sister. You didn't do this, you stay here while I go.
Right, I had to carry you all the way back here.
And I think at that moment it wasn't him trying to break her as much as it was him realizing what they're up against. You need to stay here and let me take care of this.
When I think that there is I don't know, just like seeing her being underestimated in that way was just, it was so cool to see the turn where like, I feel like the way that the movie showcases her is, we understand that she's a resourceful character who's eventually, we know movies, we know she's going to win in the end, but seeing the movie like basically turn every single character to realize like, oh, she's the real deal, to the point that she's coming back to her village with like the head of like the green glowing blood head of a predator in her hand,
all
and
over
like
her face.
all over her face. Plus she's got like a flintlock pistol from these French trappers that she definitely murdered. And like it's just like, oh yeah, we need to stop underestimating this lady. Like,
yeah.
So one thing I have, because obviously I don't have any knowledge of the native culture. When at the beginning of the movie, when Tabi comes back with the lion, they give him the staff. And then at the end, when she comes back with the flint pistol and Predator's head, she receives the staff from the elders. Is that like a tribe leader type thing? Is that like a warrior? What does that mean when they hand that staff over?
I honestly didn't. I saw the movie twice. I didn't track that. I didn't notice the staff exchange. Once again, like I said, I'm not Comanche, so I can't necessarily speak to it being a specific Comanche tradition. But at least for the purposes of the movie, they were definitely playing it as like a show of respect, or like you've completed your rite of passage kind of thing.
And I thought it was amazing for her to get that at the end, and then they're all doing the cheer. At this point, she's the hero of the group. And to see her become the final girl, I hate that term, but to see her become the final girl in this film was amazing. Because like you said, it's not just the Predator that is underestimating her. It's the whole tribe, even her mother, the medicine doctor, when they're talking and she's like, you are great at so many things. Why must you be a hunter? And she literally says, because you think I can't. Mm-hmm. That's why I have to do this, because you all don't believe I can.
Yeah. And I think that the movie did such an effective job of, I want to go back to something that we talked about, which was the her falling into the mud, of like taking things from the original Predator movie, just like small references here and there, and like, but not just using it as a throwaway reference, using it as like a really earned way to like, showcase this character who's going on her own rite of passage journey. Like, Arnold Schwarzenegger uses the mud to conceal himself from the Predator in the first Predator movie. Whereas in this situation, like she uses the mud to like trap the Predator and like murder him. There was the reference to, Arnold Schwarzenegger in the first Predator movie screams at the Predator to try to get him into the trap by screaming like, come on, do it. Come on, to kill me. Like, whereas Amber Midthunder's character in this very specifically, she has like a beat like that where she's trying to convince the Predator to go toward her, like, the laser trap that she set up. Mm-hmm. But she says the specific lines that I think that either her brother or her tribal leader said to her at the start of the movie that you have to do in your rite of passage journey, which is like, you're going to come toward me. You're going to stop here and come no further, and it's just even that, like, there's the worst version of this movie would just play that as a reference. But like that they played it as like a reference that also like really told the full extent of this character's journey that they're going on, and showing us like the moment where they're officially hitting their like rite of passage is just like rad. It's just cool.
It's beautiful. And I agree with you. When she's saying that to him, this is where you're done. You go no farther than this point. You're like, oh man, she's got him. Yeah. She's not going to deliver this line unless she's got him at this point. So that's something that I thought was absolutely cool too. I agree with you. I wanted to talk about that, about how he says that to her earlier. Like, if you're serious about this, this is what you do. And she does this in his honor there at the end with the Predator.
Yeah. So I really like the updated, the look of the Predator, like the, his helmet thing.
Almost like
it looks like a skull or something. Yeah. I just think it looks cooler. And when he rips it off, when he's on the horse and he rips it off of him, I think it looks really awesome. Yeah. Did you like the look of the Predator, the updated look?
Also, if you want to talk about a crowd cheer moment, the moment where Tabi like comes and uses the spear to rip the Predator's helmet off is just like, oh man, what a crowd pleasing moment.
If he like yells or does his little thing with his
Yeah, the look of the Predator was great. I think that they did a really good job of showcasing like a new Predator design that looked just as cool, threatening, and iconic as the previous Predator design, and while also feeling like a Predator. Like it still had the three laser dots, still had the heat vision. It still had kind of like all the bells and whistles that you'd expect out of a Predator, while also giving it like this new fresh look that fit the setting of the film.
And it also looks older than the Predator from the 80s, which is supposed to, obviously, because it's a prequel that takes place in 1719, but it looks like it doesn't have the technology that the one there had. Now it's just like an actual skull that he has over top of him rather than the you know,
like
the
the
metal.
metal. Yeah.
So I like how they did that as well. So in closing here, Joey, I want to talk about a ranking of the film. But before we do that, I want to ask you, obviously Predator is a franchise. Where do you think this would rank in the Predator franchise for you?
So I think that this ranks this is for sure the best Predator movie since the original, just no question. And it might be just the best Predator movie. You know, my like I went back and watched the original Predator after watching this just to kind of see where my senses were. And the original Predator is such a classic. You know, of course, it's just like it's one of the top 3 like 1980s machismo movies starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's like, you know, it's a classic for so many reasons. I think that I think that Prey, by telling like a very focused story, that was like a little bit more focused on character than just, you know, everything that we kind of understand about Arnold Schwarzenegger as like, you know, an 80s action star. Like, I think that this was the better movie. Like, I think that, you know, I think that the story that this told was just a little bit more like emotional and like emotionally resonant and just like better written than the original Predator. And I totally get if you prefer the original Predator for, you know, like you know, a million reasons, like it's such a classic. But yeah, I think that this might be the better movie.
I'm with you, and it may be the newness of it, but I have this as my favorite Predator film. A couple rewatches that may change, but I agree with you. I don't think that there's any other debate except for the fact that this one and the original Predator are 1A and 1B to me.
Yeah.
Like that's how I would. What about you?
Yeah, I think I like it more than the first one for sure. I do like the first one, but other than that,
there's a couple other movies in the franchise that I like.
They're okay,
but
yeah, like
I think that when you, like you said, when it comes to consistent storytelling, this one isn't just going for men with muscles high-fiving and get to the chopper. You don't have
and that's fun. No, like they're not that's fun. I love, you know, get to the chopper and then 2 guys with just like clearly Vaseline on their muscles like doing this. It's like that's fun. I love that. But it's also, but like I think that just in the craft of storytelling, I think this was better.
Right.
Yeah.
So now in honor of Sledgehammer Horror, as always, we always end these with a skull count. Now what we're going to do is we are going to be ranking Prey on what we felt the movie deserves, and we're in rather than a My First Horror Movie where we rank it on how it affected you, this being a Sledgehammer Reviews, we're going to rank this movie on what we think of it overall with production, direction, acting, everything. So 0 skulls being the worst and 5 being the best. Joey, you are our guest, so 0 to 5 skulls, what would your ranking of Prey be?
So I talked earlier about how this movie has like, you know, amazing native representation and they really did the right stuff there. But I think that like I also want to stress this is an incredible movie. Just as a movie, it's great. Like it's great in native representation, and it's also just great as a movie. So yeah, I mean, I want to say 10 skulls out of 5. This is incredible, you know.
Yeah.
And I mentioned earlier that like I think that I didn't totally answer your question about if good native representation kind of like if that influences how I view if a movie's good or not. I think that in this situation, it's like I view them separately, but one kind of affects the other. Like, if you know, the native representation was awful, I would definitely think the movie wasn't as good.
Right.
But in this situation, because it's so great, it definitely like increased my enjoyment of the movie because it did, you know, it did its job. It wasn't horribly offensive, which is, you know, so like I said, this gets 5 out of 5 as a movie. 5 out of 5 native representation, so 10 out of 5.
Awesome. Perfect. What about you, babe?
I would actually rate it a 5. I had a lot of fun with it. I like how, you know, she's a badass and, you know, she shows them that I am a leader. And yeah, I really enjoyed the movie a lot. And like we already talked about the authentic feel and stuff like that. I really liked it.
I'm the cynic of the group. I do like the movie. I think it's the best Predator movie since the original Predator. I'm going to give it 4 out of 5 skulls. I think that there were a couple slow moving parts, and there's a part that Ashley and I argued about last night. How she literally says, when Naru says, I'm not a threat to him, so he didn't come after me. Yet you got a Frenchman that's laying on the ground, obviously not a threat at all, and the Predator just walks up and kills him anyway.
He had a gun. That's
the gun wasn't working, and he was just laying there. So
the Predator doesn't know the gun isn't working.
He also wait, are you talking about the first Frenchman or the second Frenchman?
The last one.
Yeah, if the fire were
The
Yeah,
douchebag that should have been killed anyway.
Yeah. So I get what you're talking about. I guess to side with your co-host, I think we saw earlier, it's clear that the Predator in his like heat vision is tracking weapons. Like when he first sees the Comanche tribal members, he like there's like a highlights that go up on the spear and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So and like he also was, fired at by these guns earlier, so he knows what a musket is. So my guess is that like part of Amber Midthunder's character's trap was giving him this unloaded gun, so he'll try to fire it, and then the Predator would see it and be like, "Oh, he has a weapon. Clearly, this guy's a threat."
Okay.
Yeah.
And she was giving that big speech beforehand too, so that makes sense too. Like you don't even realize I'm killing you when he had the gun. So
And
I guess
he won't either.
Yeah.
he won't either.
Yeah.
So that's
and then she shoots the Predator in the back of the head with a flintlock pistol from point blank range.
Yes.
God, this movie
execution
rules.
style, man.
Yeah, this movie
But she's
rules.
such a
I love this
badass.
movie.
I love it.
Yeah, she's a badass. I love it.
Me too.
I and like I said, I do love the movie. I didn't. The biggest problem I had with it is we were watching it on a freaking iPad, not on a cinema screen. That was the biggest problem I had with the movie. So, Joey, I do want to thank you, man. I've been trying to work with you for a long time. To finally make this happen means so much to me. But please don't go anywhere, man. We got a couple more questions for you. And before we sign off, we want to remind everybody that we have all of Joey's social media links down here in the description. So please make sure you're giving him a follow so you can stay up to date on everything that he has coming up. Until next time, I'm Ken Sledge.
And I'm Ashley Sledge.
Keep talking horror.
Stay who you are.
And we'll see you guys soon.